I will entertain at this point and time questions on the floor. Sam Poppin.
Number
25?
Number 14.
14. Oh. Point slope, children, you did it, you just don't remember it. Remember, it's always in this form. It's always in this, write this down. All you have to do is fill in the blank. The y2 minus y1 equals m, and then parentheses x2 minus x1. You just have to put the slope in where it belongs, and then put the x where it belongs, and the y where it belongs. That's all you're doing, is filling in those two numbers, points. So it's just going to be this, y sub 2 minus 2, because that's the y value, equals the slope, which is -6, times x2 minus x1, which is 1. Now, can I tell you the only thing you must be careful of? I will say this on the video, and I will enunciate clearly. Notice how these are both negatives like they were there? That will be true unless they're negative here. If this would be a -1, then this actually becomes a positive one because it's a negative. Same thing here. If this would have been a -2, this would be x plus 2. So as long as these are both positive, it's going to look exactly like that with the negatives. But if one of them would be negative, then that's got to change. And I can't tell you because I don't know if tomorrow they do that or not.
Tomorrow.
I thought
Okay.
tomorrow we did the test.
Correct.
Wait, when's the test?
Is that Grace or
It's a devotion.
oh, it's a marker?
Tomorrow.
I'm sorry, Wednesday's test.
That
That and Caroline Stewart's spelling test. Do we get to study the words you're going to make, or are they going to be too easy even to study?
We need a study.
Wait, no, we need to. I'll make them. Yeah.
Because we can photocopy and print them out. Do that. Then there might be trouble. Moving on.
Wait,
Wait, is that the answer?
This is all there is, yeah. This is the answer. That is the answer.
That's it.
That's all there is. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Wait, did we always do the,
Usually we do slope intercept form or standard form, but this is a third way.
like, do you ever, I don't remember adding up y sub 2.
Yeah. I don't think so.
I just put the y.
Maybe it was it just x and y?
Yeah.
Maybe it was. It doesn't matter. But you gotta know that these are 2 y points, 2 x points. I'll go with that. Taylor.
Okay, so for how it's like, you don't do anything with the x squared and the y squared, you just think
They're not squares, they're subs.
subs.
Squares are different than, these are just labels. Anytime there's a subscript on the bottom, they're just labels. When
But
it's
then
on
why do
top,
you need
it's squares. Because there's 2 different sets of points when we talk about lines. You've got 2 x points and 2 y points. You just take one set of points, put it there, and not the other set.
And then you just do, because the y point is 2, so then you put it in and it's -2, and
2 for y and 1 for x.
then just, it just stays negative.
Unless they're negative in the points, then they become positive. That's what we just talked about. Caroline?
Do number 16.
Yes.
16. Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a great math problem. Anytime people, they ask you, you're asked in math, and something only happens every so often, and something else happens every so often, and they ask you, when will they happen together? It's nothing more than finding their common multiples. Or you could think our least common multiple. Jim visits the barber every 9 days, Ralph visits every 24 days, Pete visits the barber every 12 days. If all three visit the barber on the same day, how many days will it be before they all meet the barber again? It is nothing more than the least common multiple of 9, 12, and 24. And if you remember, least common multiple, greatest common factor, they start off doing them the same way. Both of them, the easiest way to do it, you could, by the way, count.
That's what I do.
You could count, but for this one it's not so bad because every multiple of 24 is going to be a multiple of 12, so you don't really have to worry about that. You just need to figure out when will 9 and 24 end up happening at the same time. And you could do it and count it, or you could do this way, and this would be pretty quick here. Prime factorize. 9 is 3 times 3. 12 is 4 times 3, 2 times 2 times 3, and 24 is 2 times this. These are all the prime factors. This is 24, this is 12, this is 9. When you want to find the least common multiple, you take the group that has the most of those factors. Which one has the most 2's? This one, it has 3 of them. 2 times 2 times 2.
What's the last?
Which group has, that's a 3. Which group has the most 3's? This one, it has 2 of them. This, when you remultiply it, will be the least common multiple of all 3 of those numbers, which happens to be 8 times 9, 72.
Wait, can we just keep on going up in each number until we get one for all three of them?
I can tell you for this problem, it's not that bad, but if it's something that's really high, it's going to take you days, if not years.
Maybe.
Sometimes
But on the test, we do something like.
if you want, if that's the way you want to take it, go ahead. This is Emma.
Number
17?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 17.
17, people write this in your notes, you cannot go wrong. The formula for inverse variation, well, I'll give you a couple ways to think about it. The formula, though, for inverse variation is simply this. x1 times y1 has to equal x2 times y2. The deal with inverse variation is when you multiply things together, you must always get the same product. What's that say? Second. Okay. Because inverse variation was this. What did we use to do inverse variation? Let's just do the thing here. Okay, that means this. Okay, and here's where Taylor, remember I said the sums don't mean anything, you don't do anything mathematically, they're just labels. If y varies inversely as x, y is 8 when x is 7. That's your first point. Y is 8 when x is 7. Find x when y is 4. I want to know x when y is 4. So you need, because there's 2 different y values and 2 different x values there, you need some way to distinguish between the 2 of them. That's why you say, okay, I'm going to make this x sub 1 and y sub 1, and this can be x sub 2, and this could be y sub 2. But the gist is this. What is 7 times 8? 56. Anytime you multiply x and y together, if it's inverse variation, it has to equal 56. And that's what this does. You take 7 times 8 and get 56. And you need to know when, you don't know what x is, but you know y is 4. When does 4x equal 56? When x is, what, 14? 4 times what number is 56? 14. If x was 28, y would have to be 2, because what times it? I will do that again. X times y, x is 7, y is 8, I get 56. X is, we don't know, y is 4, so that is 4x. Divide by 4, divide by 4.
What is it next to the 7 in the parentheses?
8,
No, in the blue, at the bottom.
8, we could say distance and gas left in your tank. Well, here'd be an example. Let's say your car has a gas tank that has 20 gallons in it, right? And you get how many miles per gallon? Let's just say you get 20 miles per gallon. That's a total, you're gonna go 400 miles. This is all inversely proportional because if you only have 8 gallons, how much gas might that doesn't work, sorry. Moving on. Somewhere there it works, but I'm not sure. Sam, 20. And this is what I.
That's right.
Sorry.
We actually do 19.
Write an equation for direct variation. Direct variation just is this. Y equals K times X, where K is what we call the constant, which it's spelled with a C, or constant of variation. Or another way to think about this, what the letter K is what do you multiply x by to get y? What would I multiply x by to get y? 4. The way to figure it out, though, mathematically, is put this in for y. Y is 16. I don't know what my k is yet, even though you told me it. But I know that x is 4. If you solve that equation, divide by 4, divide by 4, k equals 4. That's not my answer, because that's not an equation. The equation is you have to put the 4 in for k right here. So that's where y equals 4x. Let's throw another one in.
That's the answer. Okay,
That is the answer. Wait. What if it was this? What if it was 2, 10? What would the equation be? Y equals, what do you multiply this by to get that? Y equals 5x. That would be the equation. What if it was this?
Oh, that's all.
What if it was 12, 6?
Negative.
No, it's not negative. Half. Y equals 1/2 times this gives you this.
So
What if it was 6, 48?
8.
Y equals constant of variation 8 times x. What if it was something that didn't go evenly into something? What if it was 5, 9?
Fraction.
Then we don't worry about that.
Well, you'd have to, you want to know what times 5 gives you 9. 5 times what number gives you 9? 9/5. Y equals 9/5 x. More children, more. I know there's somebody out there.
You do 19.
19.
Actually, got 19.
Again, please make sure you know the difference between finding the greatest common factor and factoring it. Factoring it means you need to find it and then take it out, in which most people got it. What do these have in common? Well, they have a 2. They both have c squared that you should take out, and they both have a d. That is your least common, greatest common factor is what that is. What's the biggest you can take out of them? Why isn't it c to the 4th power? Because I can't take 4 c's when I've only got 2 c's. It's what you can get out of both of them. And then you have to put the parentheses.
You get 3.
No, 3 C's.
No, someone has 2. How do you take 2 c's?
Oh,
3 c's out of a 2 c. Then you have to put the parenthesis and say, what do I multiply this by to get this? Well, I have the 2 already. I have the c already. I need to go from d to d cubed, so that is my d squared. What do I multiply this by to get my next term? I have the 2. I have to go from c squared to c4, so I need c squared. I already have the d, so I don't need that. This is factoring it out.
like that.
Wait, can you explain the part about how you get this stuff from the station? Just how you get the squares and squares.
See what I have here? What I have here? What am I missing?
Oh.
The wait, you're not gonna ask me to do a problem you didn't do, are you? You are gonna ask me to do a problem that you didn't do?
Well, I mean, I didn't know how to do it, that's why I was.
Oh, which one is that?
Wow, that's
That would be 18.
18.
I forgot.
Yeah, it's good we talked about, the following scores are for both, identify any outliers, what's the effect of any measurements? First thing I would do is put these in order from least to greatest, which you want to do. So you need to organize it, 67, correct? What next? 167, 167, 170, 171,
172,
72,
183,
183,
185, 192, 192.
Identify any outliers. Well, in order to probably do this right, do you remember what the formula was to find an outlier?
Subtracting like 13.
I believe it's 1.5 smaller than the median of the Just take a look at it. Scratch it. If you notice how close these are to each other and how far away this is, obviously 67 is an outlier. If tomorrow's gives you something closer than that, or Wednesdays give you close to that, we'll worry about that later. But the question it says, if you have this outlier, which we do, what does that effect have on other measures of central tendency? Well, and that would be, well, you've got the range, which I don't think they talked about, did they?
Yes, they did.
The median, the mean, and the mode.
When we write that.
It wouldn't have any effect on the mode, because it doesn't, nothing repeats, so there's no effect there. The average, you'd have to sit down and calculate, you're right, let's just skip that one.
Yay!
I'll give you later in a moment.
There we go. Yeah, you're good at. Yay! I don't know if it's hard enough, but it's one of those.
I can do this, watch this.
Oh.
Another one, Phil, Kyle, any questions back here? Which one?
15.
Yay! 15. When it asks you for which rational expressions is undefined, that means this, Kyle. This whole thing is undefined when the bottom of a fraction is 0. So if you have x minus 2, you want to know when will that be 0, because if it's 0, it can't happen because we're never allowed to divide by 0. You could probably do this in your head, or we could just do it as an equation and solve
The
it.
same thing for the top, right?
The top doesn't matter. Top can be anything. Top can be 0. You can divide 0 by something, but you can't divide something by 0. Kyle, how do I get x by itself? I just add 2. I add 2. X cannot be 2 because if it's 2, 2 minus 2 is 0, and 0 is undefined and you can't do it. So whatever the bottom is, you have to figure out when it will be 0 because you cannot have that because zeros are bad on bottom of fractions.
Okay, so what's the answer?
2.
Oh, that's all?
Determine the value for which this is undefined. The value is 2. Or maybe it's values if you got more than one. This one only has one.
You did that special equal with the line. Right.
Mark,
For number 12, you have to like do the substitution or whatever. How would you get y by itself again? How do you do that?
well, first of all, if you look at this, there's only one logical choice I would have to solve this for substitution. And that would be, since this y is the only of the 4 letters that doesn't have a number in front of it, I would solve this one for y first before I substitute it in, which just means I would subtract 3x over.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this is what y equals. This is what I put in for y in the other equation. So you end up with your 2x that we started with, plus 3 times what we said y is, which is 6 minus 3x. And that all equals a negative 10. Are you with me there? This is what y equals there, sliding right there. So you end up with 2x plus 18 minus 9x equals negative 10. Put 2x with negative 9x, it's negative 7x. Subtract 18, looks like negative 7x equals negative 28. Divide by negative 7. X appears to be 4. In which case you then take that 4, walk it up to the top one, any one of the 2 that you started with. I put it in right here. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. 6 minus 12 is a negative 6 for y. Again, solve for one of them, substitute it in, get your answer, and then once you change it, now we're forging ahead. Josh,
Can you do number 5?
is that the stem leaf plot?
No. Which one is this?
This one should not be too difficult. You can only combine like terms if they have the same letters with the same exponents. So m squared n squared only goes with another m squared n squared, which happens to be this one and this one. If I start with 7 of them and I take 4 of them away, I am then left with 3 m squared n squared. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I start with 7 of them, m squared, n squared, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, m squared, n squared. I start with 7 of them, and I remove 4 of them. I am left with 3 of them. Then I have m squared m. I have a negative 5 of them, and I have a plus of 3 of them. So if I start with 3 and I take 5 away, I'm going to end up in the hole by 2 of them. They don't change, their exponents and their letters don't change, the variables don't change. Just because I took some away doesn't mean this makes it n4s or n6s. They stay the same.
Stay the same.
Melees.
10.
Another one you didn't do?
Because of
I doubt that.
The salt.
They're either going to ask you on Wednesday of a line that's either parallel or perpendicular. So you need to know, what do you know about the slope of lines that are parallel? Parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal. In other words, you flip the fraction upside down and make it its opposite. So, here's the deal. they gave you this line. They want to know what line that's parallel to this would have these points on it. The only thing you need out of this, what they gave you, is the slope. That's all you care about right now. You know that the new line has to have the same slope. It has to be a 3x. Y equals 3x plus b is how it starts out being. Your new line has to have a slope of 3. You just need to figure out what the letter b is. How do you figure out what the letter b is? That's why they gave you this point. You put 2 in for x, negative 2 in for y, and figure out what b is. Negative 2 in for y, 2 in for x. This is just to figure out what the letter b is going to be or where it's going to cross the y-axis. So you end up with negative 2 equals 6 plus b, subtract 6, b equals negative 8. This is not your answer, because that's not an equation of a line. That's just what b is. You then need to take your b and put it back into where you needed it to start off with. So the equation of the line is y equals 3x minus 8. If it would have said perpendicular, then you have to do the same thing we just did, except you don't start with a 3 slope. You would start with a negative 1/3 slope, because the slope of perpendicular lines is the opposite flipped over fraction. Start out being 3, I flip it over, 3 goes on the bottom. Start out being positive, ends up being negative, plus b, and then you'd have to plug those 2 points in for that. Let's see what
Can you just tell us if it's gonna be?
I don't know.
I cannot.
I
I
don't
don't have the
understand
test in front of me. Don't understand what.
I'm gonna hope that where I thought the answer would be like y equals 6x and it's like 2 and 3.
Where does 6 come from?
The negative 2 equals 3 times 2.
This, when you do this, you're just looking to find out what the b is. The x goes away because I substituted in. There's no x there. There's no y there. You're just finding out what the letter b is. B ended up being negative 8, so you put it in.
Oh, so you
Number 11, anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Let's talk about 11 first. This is not a line plot. This is a stem and leaf. Just remember with the stem and leaf, the leaf has to be only 1 digit. So all of these ending digits are the leaves. Whatever comes in front of the ending digit is the stem. So your stem goes all the way from the 10s to the
40s.
You were so popular.
40s. Is there a 40? Yeah. So you've got
Not just
1, 2, 3, 4.
body jump.
10 is a 1 and a 0. 48 is a 4 and an 8. 36 is a 3 and a 6. 15 is a 1 and a 5. 12 is a 1 and a 2. 22, and you just do that for all of them.
Does that to go in order of the things?
Yes. Which makes it a little tough because you gotta think ahead a little bit. You don't wanna put the 0s and the 8s next to it.
Alright.
Just gotta hold off for now.
Okay.
Andrew, you have a question? You just stretching? Holly? Who?
I got like the same degree.
Number 7 says a block of ice that's in the shape of a cube. Important word, cube. What do you know cubes? Cubes have
I attempted to draw a cube.
all
It says back.
the same sides. How do you find volume, Holly, of a cube? It's side times side times side. Cubes are different than rectangular prisms because all the sides are equal. So you don't do volume equals length times width times height because they're all the same. They're not different. So volume equals side cubes. We know the volume is 729, so you need to figure out what number times itself 3 times gives you 729, which is the cube root of 729.
I remember hearing that. I knew that.
And it's not 729 divided by 3.
It's what I thought.
Right. And it's important to think some easy numbers. This is all trial and error. 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000, that's too big. So it's gotta be less than 10. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1, so 1's too low. I believe 9 was what came up. 9 times 9 is 81. And 81 times 9 is 7.
Can we use a calculator for that? So high.
Come on, Josh. From 259. Alex? Sam?
Wait, and what was the answer for that one?
9.
Oh, okay.
What, Sam? 9. Problem number 9?
Yes.
Where is 9?
You're there.
And 9.
Good try, right there.
Problem number 9 says find the measure of angle B.
Wait, what? Oh.
Sam, the only thing you have to know about similar shapes is they have the same corresponding angles. So Sam, this angle, C corresponds with F. You need to figure out if this one corresponds to this one or this one corresponds to this one, but obviously this has to be 30 degrees, so this corresponds with this. Angle D has to be the same as angle A. Similar shapes have the same angles. This has to be 60 degrees. And you could have figured it out. You didn't even need to know that because this is 90, this is 30, what plus that gives me 180. Texas, watch out, baby. Watch out, Texas.
You got 9. I got 30. You got 9.
Last chance. Really?
Let's see.
Hey, wait, let me check hard.
Wait, what now?
Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. You do 8, 6.
8 just told you to write the inequality. It didn't say to solve it, just write it. 12,306 is less than or equal to the product of 3,000 and a number. That's all you do. There's no solving, there's no nothing. Just write the words in the math sentences.
New number.
That'll be great.
Why don't we just do it?
Elimination. Elimination doesn't get any easier than this because these are already negative. So it's just this plus this goes away. 8y equals 32, y equals 4. Then you have to put 4 back into either one of those. 3x plus 8 is that, subtract 8, you get, is that right?
You get 9.
9. 3 goes to the 9, it's 3 times. Want to hear the 8? Want to hear the 8 this song?
I saw it.